Today we'd like to welcome Will Hillenbrand to our podcast. Will is a native Ohioan from Cincinnati, and he's a celebrated author and illustrator of children's books, and he has published over 75 books. Thanks for joining us today, Will.
I'm happy to be here.
Thank you. Yeah. Earlier today, you did our story walk. Did that go well?
Oh, it was amazing. It's a beautiful location. I don't know if I've been at a location that's had a more picturesque setting for a story walk. To be able to have a little bit of a woodland all the way through to a little bit of a meadow and a pond.
Yay, Orrville.
Yay.
Yeah. Gorgeous. And what a place to be able to take a walk when you're reading a book, especially with young children.
Yeah.
So, Will, we have just a few questions for you. We're really excited that you decided to come to our little town, and we appreciate that so much. And being willing to answer some questions for our podcast, too. You write exclusively children's books, or have you ventured into young adult or?
Children's books have been my mode, and for me, it's the audience I most adore.
Oh, yeah. What a great answer. They are the best. I have grandchildren, so I feel the same. Are any of your characters based on, I know that they're, animals mostly, but are any of them based on, your childhood experiences at all?
Almost. They're all based on my experiences. Some from childhood, some not. Some seen through experiences that I might have had with my son. But with the book, The Voice in the Hollow, and the follow-up book, which will be out this coming fall, The Winding Willow, both of those are based off of my own experience. The first book, the Voice in the Hollow, was an experience that happened to me when I was in third grade. At third grade, being a young Catholic boy, we would also need to be able to serve Mass, and back then it was only boys who did that. So I didn't have a decision on that, but that's the way it was. So it would mean that we would serve Sunday Mass, and at that point I did 11 o'clock Mass, which meant I had the early Mass from Monday through Saturday, which was 6 o'clock in the morning. And so giving you an example here of what happened and what I draw my inspiration from, that Monday morning was in January, and I have three older brothers. When my oldest brother had his job to do, my parents drove him over to church. We're about 5 blocks away, so kind of like Orrville. It's not really that big. It was a neighborhood. It was in Cincinnati, but it was a neighborhood in the city. My brothers that were 2 years older than I am, they waited until they could walk together. So one postponed it, and the other one did it when it was his turn. They walked together. But when it was my turn, I waited for someone to wake up or make breakfast, or they all slept. And so I had to make a decision about going over these 5 blocks to church. Our school was right behind the church, so I'd walk there every day, but never at this time in the morning. And it was dark, and it was snowy, and I was late. And I waited for someone else to go with me, and everybody was sleeping. I wanted to go back to bed too, but I had a job to do. And when I got out that morning, it was snowing. It was a new snow, and it was cold. I didn't have gloves on my hands or mittens. I had my tube socks. I put my socks in my hand. I was finally in such a rush, I just put my extra socks on my hands, and I dashed out the back door. When I got to the street over between the houses, I had to make the decision of running up on the avenue, which had sodium vapor lights and cars passing back and forth. Even at that time in the morning, I'd have to run the whole way past my dad's barbershop and then down the other street, and I'd be breathless by the time I got to church. But it was a way it was lit, and ominous feelings that direction, but I decided that to go the shortcut through the old hollow, even though it was spooky. Now, it was an odd morning because, it's just like one of those times when, like the first time you went to a prom and you saw lights flash when you were coming home, because street lights were always constantly on. But so it was odd because none of the houses seemed to have any lights on. It was just vacant. And when I got to the opening of the old hollow, I looked into it, and it felt different. Almost like when a child feels like there's something behind a closet door that's partly open or under their bed.
Right.
I've been through there many times, never at this time, never on my own. I could see church through the snow that was falling. But I didn't have to see it to know that it was there. I could know it was there with my eyes closed. So even though the snow veiled it, I knew where I was going. But I didn't have the courage to go through, so I took a deep breath to build up my courage. You know, like we often do. Mm-hmm. We're going to do something hard. Take a deep breath and do it. And I'm going to run like...
the Dickens?
Yeah, right through the hollow. And if anything's in there, they're going to have to be pretty fast to catch me. I took that deep breath and I smelled mothballs. Not something you'd expect to smell.
Yeah.
At that time in the morning or there or whatever.
Outdoors, right.
Yeah, a cold, frosty morning. And there's a person standing next to me. And she had a big floppy hat. She wasn't scary. She had kind eyes. I had a scarf on, so did she. Just saw her eyes and a big floppy hat. Peppermint scarf she had on and a pink dress. And she looked at me and she said, "You're up early this morning. Where are you off to?" I wasn't sure I should respond to her because she looked familiar, but I didn't know who she was. So I just looked where I was going, which meant I looked through the hollow. And she said, "Are you going that way?" And again, I just nodded. I didn't say a word to her. She held out her hand, and I took it. And now my feet weren't frozen, and I could walk through. And her fingers were real. They were kind of bony, and they were in a glove. I had I had my socks on, my hands. And it felt like it took forever to walk through the hollow with her. It felt like it took forever. And I wanted to run. I wasn't running, but my feet were moving, and I didn't feel scared. Mm-hmm. Anything that was in the shadows, they were at bay. And that's kind of what I wanted. But when we got to the other side, I knew we were parting. She said, "Do you know the rest of your way from here?" Again, I didn't say anything. I just nodded like, yeah, I know my rest of the way. And I bolted across the street, and you know how fast a third grader can bolt? I mean, I just was there, and there was a gas lamp on the other side. It was a diagonal street, so I got to that part, and I was running so fast, and then like 10 things I thought of at once, and the most important thing was I had not said thank you. And I felt my parents probably, because we all lived in a neighborhood, I thought they probably would know. And I would find out later I didn't say thank you. And that's the way our family worked. And I was like, I know what's coming. So I hooked my hand onto that lamppost. I mean, I just got in. It's almost like an amusement park ride. I just hooked it, and I swung my body around so I could say thank you. And she wasn't there. I thought, well, she wasn't moving so fast before. Where did she move? So I decided to do what was available in a visual person. So I just followed my tracks back, and I'd say, well, she's going to walk up to the avenue, or she's going to walk to the other side, or she's going to walk to one of the houses. I'll see the footprints. I only saw fresh footprints that were mine, no one else. And I didn't know whether I could believe my eyes or not, but I saw and I knew what I knew, and then I turned around and I ran as fast as I could to church and changed into my cassock. The bells rang and life went on like that. I never told anybody that story until my wife said, you do lots of stories for children's or other books, but don't you have any of your own? I said, well, I have this one, and I was we were in our 30s when I told her that story. I just didn't know how that might translate into a book. And if you want to know what that's like, it's in The Voice in the Hollow, and you'll hear echoes of what happened. Now, Hubert Cumberbund is the main character. Is that me? Yeah, I also like the letter H, so last name is Hillenbrand. His first name begins with an H. It's Hubert. So a lot of times these days you'll hear about authenticity in books and in literature, and have authenticity. It sounds complicated, and if you were in a college class, it might even sound burdensome. That simply means truth. And so the point is to be able to say, how do I tell a truth but protect the innocent?
Sure.
And be able to say, how do I also make it available for children so they can find the things that are mysterious, that we wonder about, exist in our world, and they have for a long time, whether they're mythic or other kinds of feelings about the trees. And for me, even today, it's a funny thing, but I always feel kind of alive when I'm out and outdoors. A story walk, I feel alive. It's a lively place. And that's because you're surrounded by life. The trees have a life. The grass has been mowed. It exists in the world. How we personify that just means, in a way, I think about it as how we respect it, how we, and that's again not my own idea. That can be linked back to Native peoples feeling that they have that. So when I do a story, it can be like that, or it can be like another book that just came out, which is Summer's Here, a Bear and Mole story, and the origins of that story simply come from my own experience. My dad would pitch baseball to us from the time we could hold a bat. So he's throwing. So then when I start formal baseball, they put on a tee, and I can't hit it. Why can I hit a ball that's thrown, but when it's on a tee,
right.
I can't hit it? And finally, I was relieved when we finally got to pass T-ball and the ball was thrown and I could hit it. Mm-hmm. But I didn't know about why that might be. But I have a learning disability, and in some cases, why can I draw and have no problem, and why I was reading a difficulty is that because the words are sitting there, and when I'm drawing, they're moving. I'm moving a line, and I can see it. Mm-hmm. And so I see it in a different way. And so there's some relationship with those aspects that are my own scientific analogy on what's happened in my real kind of life. But when I translate that to a story, and with Mole having success and then being so excited about his success, he goes the wrong direction, which often when we accomplish that big goal, it's like we're so excited, what do we do now? And it's like when you're a kid, you run, and he just goes the wrong direction, so he makes an opposite direction home run. But in T-ball, that happens. So in many cases, what will happen is I'll take these little nuggets and then I'll try to think about how to reframe them. But it's all in a part of being able to say that authenticity or the truth-telling, of being able to say that, because how does another person relate to that? Because there's something core about that that's universal. And I've made it specific. And also because I do what I do with children means I have an availability of being able to take a character and allow that character to be an animal. Now, in many studies about child development, it's said that when a child if they had to make a decision about saving the life of a human or an animal, up until 4th grade, they couldn't make that decision. And when we think about it, we know, again, that's a certain kind of truth. I mean, we just, when I saw Old Yeller, I mean, it was when I read it, I mean, I was just miserable. But I saw it first, and it was before I was probably ready for it. But I mean, the movie was over for my brothers because I couldn't stop crying because even all the circumstances, that was just, again, an important truth of the way our world works. And situations come up, and not to be shielded from that, but to be able to have it. But again, it's partly being able to think about how we do that when we're emotionally have enough of a mantle to be able to understand without allowing that to penetrate in a harmful way.
Mm-hmm.
So,
wow. Did you have any specific questions, Dawn? I had a couple more.
I didn't write a thing down today.
Okay. Well, one of the ones, it just was kind of a random one, but you are an author and an illustrator, or do you consider yourself an illustrator and an author? And the reason I asked that is for the question is, what comes first for you? The illustrations or the
simple.
Words?
It's simple. So I think I could probably think of it either way, but that's simple the way they just phrased it, which is pictures always come first.
Yeah.
They always come first. And, so I think in pictures, again, research would say a third of of people are word people, a third are picture people, and a third are blending of both. I don't necessarily see myself as a blending so much as being able to be a picture person. I think in pictures. And I can remember when I draw in church, and I did that initially because when I was a kid, we always had Friday Mass. So we would not go to school first, we'd go to Mass. We had assigned pews. And again, I could walk over there, so I'd put my book back down, and then we would all, our grade level would be together, mixed boys and girls. And we got back after Mass, and our priest, his name was Father Goody. I mean, it sounds like, could you make up that name? No, he was very good, but his name was Goody. And he had a perfect monotone. So it was practically, you could not decipher what part of the Mass you were in if you really listened to the drone. It was just flat. It was like the great flatland of experiences. So
that's brutal for a child to sit through.
Yeah, but I mean, it was
an adult.
it was our discipline is what we did, and no music, no anything. It was just that. And so afterwards, Sister Mary Agnes, who was a principal, but our religion teacher, was a mixed boys and girls class, and she said to our class, she goes, "What was the gospel? Boys, not boys and girls, but boys. What was the gospel lesson?" And we went blank. We didn't know. And it was embarrassing. I didn't like that feeling, so I thought, that's not going to happen to me again. What am I going to do? So it was Friday, so we had Mass again on Sunday, and then I got the Missal out and was trying to figure out. And I was trying to look, where do you find these lessons? And that was a mystery to me, too. Didn't know what was going to happen on that Friday when we were back again. But I kind of compartmentalized some of it, so I was going to be a little bit more, I'm going to be ready. So when Friday came, I had my backpack on, and I was not very good at math, and so when I put my backpack over my shoulder and down into the pew, my math notebook kind of jumped out a little bit out of the bag. No big deal. It's just hanging out there, and with a lot of blank spaces in it. And when the gospel lesson was teeing up, and I could feel it coming, but for me, because I didn't know I had learning disability, but writing down the lesson, I would be in the very first sentence, and it would be over. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be listening to the rest because I'd just be listening to the opening. I could say a sister said was the opening line. I could probably get that. But the problem was that it wasn't going to really solve the problem. So at that moment, I thought, I'll draw it. Mm-hmm. So my math notebook was out. I just grabbed a blank area where there are plenty, and I just drew a figure with a long robe and with a couple lines for the beard. And that's the figure, and it was by profile, and they were walking. But then I added the part that tells what the story's about, because I added water underneath the feet. Now we all know what that lesson is, mm-hmm. Jesus walking on water. Mm-hmm. And then I made this little squiggle at the bottom of it that, sometimes your hand just does its own thing. And I thought, I got it. I didn't need to see that again. The sister did ask that question. She said, boys. And I had my hand up even before she asked. And she said, what was the lesson? And I told her, it's Jesus walking on water. And then I said, and sister, nobody watched Jesus more than the devil. The devil they were watching every move. And did you know that right by the heels of Jesus, and I looked at that squiggle in my mind, I saw that was a snake. And the snake was right at the heels of Jesus, watching him every move. And the boys started listening like nobody's business. And she said, that's enough, Mr. Hillenbrand. And so that was that. Mm-hmm. But the point was that I didn't need to necessarily, once I drew that picture down, and that's how I think in pictures, is it a complete scenario? Is it when I do a book, is that first drawing the final drawing? No, far from it. But that little thumbnail sketch, mm-hmm. to me, is like shorthand that means so much more, so many more volumes. And I hope that when I translate that into a book, that more developed picture still has that promise. Mm-hmm. There's a lot more behind those trees. There's a lot more behind those shadows. There's a lot more. We'll stay with the story, but there feels like there's gravity to that scene that the reader has an opportunity to bring to it.
Wow. I was just like, I don't know, do you write words, draw pictures? And you literally just drew a picture for us with mm-hmm. your story.
Sure. Yeah.
So you are just full of stories, obviously.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank
that's
you.
Awesome.
I think we're story people. Mm-hmm. And this is what's important, because recognizing that we're story people, that means that we need to be fed with stories, and that means that we need to be able to tell stories. Mm-hmm. And we can't tell stories. And when a child is very young, and I was very young, and I have very vivid dreams. Always have. I thought, well, the whole world does, but I don't know. My wife tells me I have very vivid dreams.
Mm-hmm. I can relate to that. Yeah.
I do too.
And but when I was little, I could see from the boys' bedroom to the hallway to where my mom and dad's bedroom were. There were bears and lions that walked on their hind feet. They walked in procession, a little space in between. And I had a bad dream, and I needed to see them. These characters especially appeared. They would only come after you if they realized you were awake. So I had to pretend like I was sleeping and then find this pause between the procession to dart into my parents' room. And when I successfully made that every time, believe it or not. But when I got to my parents' room, I felt safe, and they said, you must have had a bad dream. And I said yes, but they didn't say tell it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't want to tell it. I just wanted to be in the safety spot and safe. Mm-hmm. However, there are things that happen in our life that we want to put words to. things that we've seen, things that we've experienced, things that happen in our head, or things that we've actually seen, where we need to be able to record them or tell them to others. When we've had an experience of hearing many stories, that gives us a shape. We've got a beginning, middle, and end. We've got a way to be able to shape that, because if we have a powerful dream and I tell you that and I put you to sleep, it wasn't powerful. It wasn't the one that woke me up and it put you to sleep. There's evidence there. So what happens? If we're compelled to be able to tell that story, we have to put on the mantle, we have to do the reading, we have to do the listening that we hear, and then filter out so that when we have that story that we need the world to understand or to know, so they can decide what to do with it. It doesn't remain bottle locked inside of us, because that's a pressure cooker. And that pressure cooker does not have good outcomes, because if you're not able to release that pressure, there are other things that will happen to you that, or to others that are close to you, that won't be helpful. It could lead to alcoholism or some kind of abuse that will not have a good outcome. So the importance of being able to hear stories is mostly so that you can understand a pattern of how you can retell an experience. Because we never tell the moment. It's always a retelling. The story happened to me on another day, once upon a time. It wasn't right now. We're doing this right now, but it's not necessarily that kind of story. It's reflective of how that shape is. But and when you tell a dream, your dream often doesn't have an opening line. All of a sudden, you drift into it, and then all of a sudden, depending on what the dream is, it commands your attention. So when you retell that, do you say once upon a time? No, it's not a time, but you can say in my dream. And most people can recognize with that opening line the structure of what you're talking about, in my dream, and that you don't have to say what that is. Then you create the circumstances. 10 things can happen at once. But you can't tell 10 things at once unless you're in an opera and you're singing those all at once. And that's a beautiful thing. But when ordinary people do it, whether it's A.K. Rowling or someone else, you set the stage by saying 10 things. And then you go one at a time.
Yeah.
And you may not even get to all 10, but you know how it felt. So if you had something where it felt like 10 things happened at once, that's a good way to be able to say it, and then just tell the 2 or 3 things. But it felt like it was a chaos of situations that you bring clarity to. But it's not a snapshot; it's a retelling. If you think about things in pictures, or even if you think that you love movies in ways that movies tell stories, then maybe find that mode to just tell that vision that's in your head.
Well, that's a great segue to my last question. Well, second to last question. And I just thought this would be fun. If any of your books were made into a movie or a television show, who would be your dream cast to do the voices?
Oh, good question. I'll answer it like this, and that is, there are many people that do audiobooks, and I listen to a lot of audiobooks, and I think those that are done so well are beyond Academy Awards. I don't know all the names of the people that would be the right people to do that, because that's a different structure. But I do think that when an author reads their own work, you end up getting an insight through their one and only voice. That's an imprint that is suggestive to things that another person would not. So, for instance, if I had a choice of being able to listen to E.B. White read Charlotte's Web versus Jim Dale, I would prefer the author. And so I'll answer your question that way.
Okay. All right. Very good. And then you want to ask him our final question?
Yeah.
We ask everybody that we interview.
Or as much as we remember to ask. So you had mentioned that you listen to a lot of audiobooks. Would you share anything that you're currently reading, or any favorite genres or authors that you have?
Well, I'm always reading something. And for me, I do a lot of traveling, so it's a lot of audiobooks. Thomas Wolfe was a person I was introduced to probably when I was in high school, but I probably wasn't emotionally ready for the way he was doing his powerful storytelling. So Look Homeward, Angel would be a book that I think everybody should be familiar with. And if you want, there's a new release audio version of that book that just came out not too long ago that I think is brilliant. Now, with that, I can't listen to a book like that straight through.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think that sometimes it gets too close to me emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean it's hard. It means it's emotionally challenging.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean it's a bad book. It usually means it's a fabulous book.
Yeah.
It just means that I need some more oxygen to be able to give me some gaps in between. I think the conclusion of that is unexpected, but not unexpected. It is a perfect transition, which is a mark of his brilliant writing. Of course, his dialogue is fabulous if you just want to study dialogue. But, there are many. I mean, I can think about James Barrie and Peter Pan and think that, there's probably no better dialogue in the English language, but maybe no better in the imagination, because when I say the Neverland, we probably all knew that existed even before we heard it, because it lives in our unconscious. And he touched a part of that. And then, of course, we're creating characters that, whether it's Hook or Wendy, Peter, the Lost Boys, these all become iconic and familiar. So, nobody can pick out your favorite book. I just say, how do you find your favorite book? It's like your favorite piece of music you listen to a lot. And then the ones that you hear that work on you, you never get tired of. They hit you in a way that you just say, oh, I'm so grateful in this world that there was a person that was able to pen something that means something specific to me and any reader, but any reader can end up saying that was an experience that I needed, an experience that ends up filling your heart in the way only the arts can do that. Mm-hmm. And I think the arts are powerful that way, and I think that that happens with the favorite, whether it's a symphony or a piece of music that you love or a poem. We need different arts for our lives. So as we live, one day we may need Appalachian Spring by Aaron Copland. Another day we probably want Mozart's Requiem, because we are in a certain place, and that expresses for us what we can't express, but perfectly expresses what we can't express, because we have that in our inventory. That's within us, because it's been gifted to us by the great creators and geniuses that have taken the time to take what was in their head and realize it so that it can be read or performed and exist in the world for the times when we need it to be there. And we need it at different times, and we need it powerfully every day of the year. It's not a day that we really shouldn't have it. It just makes life better, period.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much again for joining us. Mm-hmm. I appreciated everything that you shared. You had a lot of wise words there, and it was great. So thank you.
Yeah,
all right,
it's a pleasure to be here. And happy 100th anniversally.
Thank you.
We get there day by day.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Happy the second 100.
Okay, well, I'm not going to be around for that. All right, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. That was a fantastic interview, and we really enjoyed talking to Will. Now we're going to talk about our July events. So what's happening in July? There's a lot of activities. Our summer reading program continues for all ages. If you're not doing that yet, you should stop in and go to the information desk or the children's desk and find out more about how you can read books and earn prizes for all ages. So coming up in July, on Monday the 7th, we have Cookbook Club meeting at 6 p.m. They are going to be making recipes out of the Great American Recipe Book. We do have copies of that book available at the circulation and information desks. On Thursday, July 10th, Brick Builders begins. That is a 3-week series, so it'll be on Thursdays at 4 for grades kindergarten through 6th grade. Building with Legos and having fun challenges and being creative. The registration is open for that, so you can sign your kiddo up anytime now. Teen Book Box registration will start on the 14th of July, and that usually lasts for 2 weeks. Students in grades 6 through 12 can register, tell me what they like to read, and I will pick out some books for them. And the pickup for those book boxes will be in August from the 4th to the 9th. We're going to have a magic show for all ages on Wednesday, July 16th at 2 p.m., Colorful World of Magic. will be fun and colorful, exciting adventure. On the 18th, we will have Teens Cook Breakfast program. We're going to try making some eggs and potatoes in the microwave. So that should be fun and interesting. So that's on a Friday, July 18th at 4 p.m. And you do want to register for that ahead of time so we know how much food to have. So that is for grades 6 to 12 as well. On the 24th, the Youth Book Club is back. This is a program I think we did maybe last summer, and they took a break for a while. The Youth Book Club is for grades 4 to 6, talking about books and doing crafts related to that book. The registration for that will open on July 10th, and the Youth Book Club does meet at 4 p.m. I believe that'll be on a Thursday. So the first one, they're just kind of going to talk about everybody's favorite books and then decide what books they want to read for the book clubs in the following months. And the last thing on my list for what is happening in July is the Nature Walk Bingo at our Story Walk. So the Story Walk is out past the dog park in Orrville here. And for the Nature Walk Bingo, they're going to read a story from the Story Walk on the nature trail, which is appropriate, and look for items to complete their bingo along the way. So that is on July 31st at 10:30 a.m., and the registration for that will open 2 weeks before on the 17th. So that is what is going on a little bit here in July at the library. We still have the adult take and make craft. If you're interested in that, stop by the information desk. And like I said, summer reading will continue through July. There's just a couple weeks going into August that summer reading happens. And of course, we still have our 100 reading challenge that will go through December as well. So lots of stuff. We're always busy over here at the Orrville Public Library. So stop in and see us soon.